I know that in Kabbalah, that's the most basic spiritual state, the state of restriction. There are several types of restrictions. So I'd like to start with the general question of what is a restriction? What do we restrict? We restrict using our ego, the usage of our ego, to such a degree to which we can start using it in direction of bestowal, in direction of connection, and not in direction of rejection and reception. So we restrict the usage of the ego, meaning the ego, as I understand, it is our desire. It is our entire nature. So what? We don't use our desire? If we want to start feeling the upper world, spiritual meaning that which is not clothed in matter, in the still, the vegetative and animate matter, but is like above it, then for us, it is necessary to readjust ourselves. We need to use our qualities, invert the direction of our qualities from reception to bestow. So the Creator or nature created our desires, and we need to restrict them and not use them. We need to make it so that we'll change them from reception to bestow. Is it related to our basic desires, a person's basic desires like food, sex, family, money? Well, actually, a person needs to reach such a degree where he uses all of his desires, basic desires, that's how they're called, and all the rest of them, not in order to delight himself, not to his own benefit. If it's something that he needs for survival, what we call desires that are not praised or condemned, then to that measure you can use them. So a restriction, more correctly put, it's over your intention and not the desire. Very true. Because whatever is necessary for the functioning of my organism, this I can use, and there are no limitations over it. It will not stand in my way of coming out into the spiritual world. It says that it's possible to use any desires, but not for yourself, but for others, for the sake of others. It's a completely different form of existence where I do not wish to exist in my own desires, but I wish to rise to the next level, the next degree of nature, to a state of bestowal instead of a state of reception. What's the reason for it? From nature, I have desires. I can't fulfill them. And I need to satisfy the desires of someone else to restrict my own and fulfill someone else. That's the plan of nature. These are two degrees in which we exist. On the first level, we're born, we develop. That's the state of our ego. And we need to gradually come out of this state and rise to the next level, where we will be inverted, where we will use our desires only to the benefit of others and not to our own. Are there such desires that I don't need to restrict? Actually, I'd put it this way, no. But in order to near these spiritual states to us, one might say that all that's necessary for my corporeal existence, these are things that I can use even without thinking about using it egoistically, because my nature obliges me to do so. Okay, is there a connection to spiritual restrictions, fests in our world? Are these things related somehow to spirituality? Well, actually, when a person begins to restrict his egoistic desires, then he gets such thoughts that maybe it's good for me to use different fulfillments from our world, a bit less. Then that way I'll be closer to spirituality. These are fundamental questions that appear in beginners. But in many religions, methods, there's a part of it is fasting, not eating, not drinking, not this, not that. Does it have to do with the roots in any way? No, it's not a direct, it has to do, but it's not a direct relation. So how does a person do this restriction? It's not that simply a desire appears in me. I want to fulfill it. Suddenly, I need to not use this desire. What's the method? The method is very simple. I maybe try to somehow limit myself. Then I begin to acknowledge, I discover that it is something that I cannot do, that actually these are different kinds of trying to avoid myself, different ways of trying to avoid myself. And then, by studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, through studying it, I start understanding how to use nature's concealed forces that can help me rise above myself and to cross from the quality of reception into the quality of bestowal. Well, this is something that we didn't talk about, but it's self-obvious that when we talk about the spiritual world, we're talking about the revelation of the upper force, the creator. So I perform this restriction as a means. The revelation of the forces of bestowal in you, the connection with others, that is the revelation of the upper force. And how does that differ from a simple egoistic calculation? I imagine that for me to reveal the upper force is beneficial, it's great and good. So I find the forces to do a restriction over whatever that is. It depends, what do you pay with? I restrict my desire, I don't use it. I suffer, but I understand that for this I'll come to the revelation of the upper force. And what will that give you? A revelation of the upper force, it says that it's a tremendous pleasure, a sense of security, eternal life. I believe in it and I restrict myself. And if I'll tell you that the revelation of the upper force gives you the ability to love, give, not think about yourself, only to the benefit of others, is it then worthwhile to sacrifice yourself in that way? Well, if the upper force will become revealed to me, then yes. What is the upper force? The quality of bestowal will appear in you. The quality of love toward others, as toward your children, and you will all the time think about them, work on them, for them. That's the revelation of the upper force? That is the revelation of the upper force. No, I don't know about this upper force. I'm not familiar with that. I need to think about it. But if I'll feel good as a result, why not? To love, it's an excellent feeling. If I love someone, I bestow, I get pleasure, no problem. That's true. That's true. But what can you do? Still, there are things to scrutinize here. So my question is, how does that differ from an ordinary egoistic calculation? This is what I was told by wise people, that you need to bestow, you need to restrict your desires. And why don't you do it? Because you don't believe in those wise people. No, because it's hard. We're trying to do it. Sometimes you can, but in most cases you can't restrict your desires. You can restrict it in relation to something, not in relation to something else. It's hard. It's necessary. It's beneficial. It's the task that is standing before us in any case, or can we somehow dodge it? There are many questions here. What do I wish to change myself for, change my nature? What does it give me as a result? To reveal the upper world, spiritual world. What does it mean to reveal the spiritual world in me? It means to reveal the quality of bestowal in me toward everyone. That's what to reveal the spiritual world is. This world, I reveal it in my egoistic desire, and what we see in that egoistic desire. All that enters and fulfills my ego is called this world. Whoever has a greater ego more strongly feels this world. If someone has a smaller desire, like little children or plants, to that measure, they feel this world. The same with spirituality, only in the quality of love and bestowal. So I need to think, what will that give me? I, nonetheless, need to learn how to appreciate, value spiritual qualities, the qualities of bestowal and love. If I will really see that they're that important and necessary, not to me, to the world, for others, I don't need to think about myself, then I'll go for it. Complicated question. By the way, it's interesting that in all religions, all spiritual methods, everyone understands that the Creator, well, I don't know if it's the quality of bestowal, but understand that it's love or somehow related to love. Everyone understands. Love is when it's not related to me, but related to others, and I fulfill others with my good qualities, feelings, desires, where I wish to do everything for them to be well off, to their benefit. That's called love. The problem is that the sages wrote, love another as yourself, and I'm the one to define who's another. And, if it's someone further away, no, to love another person means to make every person in the world close to you and to give them far more than you give yourself. Well, that's science fiction. What's the difference between restriction and a screen? Restriction is when I simply restrict reception from some external factor. It could be people, nature, whatever. But when I restrict it, I restrict my desire. It remains, but I restrict its usage. I restrict it from becoming fulfilled. That's called restriction. And what was the second question? The relation between restriction and a screen. And a screen is when I don't simply restrict the usage of my desires, but that I invert them into bestowal, into their opposite, not to receive in yourself, but to give to others. Meaning to all you already use this desire. It says that there are several forms of restriction. There's the first restriction, second restriction. If you can define it in some way, what is the first restriction? Well, actually, our desire can be based on receiving, or that corrected desire can be such that we will bestow. It could be a desire to receive, but not for yourself, but for the sake of others. So there is the first restriction where you simply don't receive anything. That's called the degree of Bina. And the second restriction, where I did receive, but in order to fulfill others. So if I correctly understand, the first restriction is not to use your egoistic desire to my own benefit, regardless of what desires. Any desire that's to my own benefit, I can't use it. And the other thing is that I have certain desires that if they're for the sake of others, to the benefit of others, I can use them. Yep. So the first restriction is more basic. It's a general desire. Yeah, obviously. And are there any other kinds of restriction? Well, there are many variations, but these are the main ones. Not to receive nothing at all, or to receive to the benefit of others, for the sake of others. But not to receive anything, that too is a kind of connection with the upper force. Of course, what are you doing it for? The main thing is the intention. I don't remember where, but Kabbalists write that the Creator doesn't think about himself. The Creator is a kind of force that doesn't even think about does he or doesn't he exist. It's kind of strange. Is it an allegory? Or for us it's strange, but it's simply a force that is opposite to us in nature. And just like we think about ourselves in any given moment in time, there is a force that is our opposite, the Creator, that in no way can think about himself. He's thinking about us, yeah? About everything besides himself. And besides us, is there anyone else? Well, in general, yes. Why is it that where the second restriction is described begin difficulties in the teaching, meaning up to the everything related to the first restriction, you can somehow grasp it. But second restriction, it's very hard to grasp what happens later on. Because the first restriction is over the egoistic desire to receive that exists in us naturally. And the second restriction, it is not exactly clear what does it work on. It works on there not being the ability to receive, but there's only the ability to become like the quality of bestowal, meaning without receiving. There's the ability where I receive, and the opportunity where I receive, and to use my intention to the benefit of others, to give them pleasure. And the other one is, it's to the benefit of the giver. And the other is that I don't receive in order to give him pleasure. Suppose I have a few millions, and I don't use them in any way. That's the first restriction. And I have a few millions. Why don't you use them? Because I understand that I'll use them to my own benefit, and therefore I will not be connected with the upper force, which is important to me. And the other condition is that I determine that I can use a certain part, but not to my own benefit. Suppose 100,000. I can use it to the benefit of others, and I can use it. And then I use this opportunity to the benefit of others, and to that measure I am connected with the Creator. True? Right, but it's not the second restriction. It's using the resources which you have. If you don't have a screen, then you can only cover yourself from reception. That's called the first restriction. If, besides that, you have the ability to fill yourself for the sake of others, suppose to receive 100,000 in order to pass it on to others, by no means for yourself, then that is already using the forces that are above the first restriction. And if you can't use the second, you can't realize the second option, then maybe have the ability to make it so that you will simply be similar to others without receiving. But that is a clearly spiritual concept, and then you will be similar to another who does not receive. So is it possible to give some kind of example of something in our world that's similar to the second restriction? Yeah, when you receive from someone and you pass it on to someone else. So I receive something, I've received 1 million from someone, and I have the ability, the power not to take it for myself. but to give everything. That's the second restriction. Yeah. So if I already start using it, then, meaning I already start using this money not to my own benefit, then that is already above. Just like Binah receives from Keter and passes on downwards. So in the language of Kabbalah, it turns out that the second restriction is a restriction over the egoistic vessels that you can't use. We understand in advance that we can't use them. I understand that a certain amount of money, regardless of what happens, we can't use it correctly, and therefore I limit myself in advance. Yeah. Now, a restriction, is it a one-time thing, one-time action, or constant? Every time you do it differently according to the circumstances. So this is what a Kabbalist does. Every time and all the time. He constantly gets certain pleasures, and he all the time calculates whether he can use them or not. By doing that, becoming a conduit of light into our world. Well, I'm trying to imagine, what does a Kabbalist receive? I live my life. There isn't anything, so suppose every day $1 million fall on you. Yeah, but, nothing falls on me. If it would fall, I'd make these calculations. It can fall on you if you will have the power not to receive it. So a Kabbalist all the time gets these opportunities from above. Yeah? That's interesting. Interesting life. I don't know. What do you mean by interesting? Life is in constant tension of properly acting, holding yourself. Yeah, but in ordinary life, nothing really comes to a person. There's no real action. No, ordinary people have their own action. Yeah, but you have to do calculations anyway all the time. Start on the level on which you are. Start creating such circumstances that you want to do everything for the correction of the world. And then you will see how more and more forces, knowledge will come to you. Afterwards, maybe also millions of dollars or something else. It all depends on the measure to which you're capable of correctly realizing them. Well, we're talking about any kind of pleasure that comes to a person, right? That he needs to constantly make different calculations. Who is he receiving it for? What can you receive? On our level, it happens automatically. Everything, I don't even have to think about it. In the egoistic desire, it all happens. Even psychologists say that before I start even grasping what is going on, my will to receive has already made its decision. Of course. And this is what a person's free will or free choice is about. Free choice is in rising above yourself. Well, okay, that's more or less it. Good luck then. Let's realize it. Okay, let's do it. Well, of course, still it's necessary to understand. The main thing is the goal. What are you doing it for? What for? That's a problem. It needs to be only for the control, for the governance of that upper force of bestowal and love and the entire world and the whole of nature. But still, how does it differ from a simple calculation? Today, that's how nature made me. I don't need to think about nothing. In me, there's a program taking these decisions, and I agree with it all the time. I'm in consent with this program, and here you're saying that I have to think, exert efforts. What for? If you wish to become similar to the upper nature of the Creator, then you need to look for ways of how to do it. And to do it means to do good. Yeah, but a person needs some kind of inclination toward it. Why become like that force? Furthermore, if you're saying that it's the force of love stolen, I'll get nothing from it. From it, you'll get nothing, and you'll get nothing in return for it. So the question is, what for? In order to be like the Creator, similar to Him. So that's the answer. Otherwise, you want to work for some kind of reward, and that will not work. That will not work. So the only thing left is to believe that nature instilled in each of us such a desire, potential, instilled forces, a desire in us that will lead us to it, actually. But we can hasten with our thoughts, thinking about it, we can hasten this metamorphosis. So if a person thinks, what is there to philosophize about here? These are unrealistic things. You're saying that one way or another, those that went through this path, they're saying that whether you want it or not, there's a program in nature and everyone will come to it one way or another, even though that it seems unrealistic. True, everyone will come to it. Okay, thank you very much. Till next time, all the best.